Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem, a postmortem of my Blitz game number 446. Before I get started on the game here, I wanted to mention that I will be away from my desk for a few days, so won't be uploading any new videos till next week sometime. But in the meantime, please feel free to enjoy the videos I've previously uploaded. I recently created a new playlist with all 30 games that I did from the Zurich 1953 Candidates Tournament, so you might want to check some of those out if you've missed any of them. Okay, but let's get on with this game. This was a blitz game. I had the white pieces kicked off with d4. I was playing a reasonably strong opponent. He had a slightly higher rating than mine, and he spots a real nice tactic in this game. But to start out with, we're getting a perfectly ordinary opening. This could be a Nimzo Indian. I play knight c3 to allow it, but my opponent goes d5. So this is a transposition. We're not really in a Nimzo Indian anymore. We're in a Queen's Gambit declined, which is usually gotten into by some other move order, but well, this is fine too. I often just play the knight here, or e3, shutting in the bishop. But bishop g5 is a very respectable and traditional way of playing the Queen's Gambit declined. And let's see, bishop e7 is actually the orthodox defense, although we get there in a move or two. I play knight f3, and now bishop e7. And so, yeah, this is the orthodox defense to the Queen's Gambit declined. Tarrasch named it the orthodox defense because he didn't like it. He was kind of making fun of it. The Tarrasch defense, of course, is putting an early c5 in, trying to aggressively go after the center. This opening is very solid but a bit passive, but really there's nothing wrong with it. So it's still played today and quite playable. So we play some normal moves here. I guess in a way there's a little bit of a dance. White is delaying moving the bishop so that if this pawn ever takes on c5, the bishop can grab back with a single move. So two other moves that white could play here, rook to c1 or queen c2. I actually briefly thought about those, but you know, at some point you're going to move this bishop. And now the most common move here, top choice you see, is d takes c4 to force you to move the bishop again. But my opponent has a different idea. He plays b6, which is usually his b6 move is played in a different system, so without the bishop on e7. And that's known as the Tartakover-Makaganov-Bondarevsky variation. So we got a bit of a combination of different systems here. But this is still in the opening book, still a reasonable way to play. I go ahead and castle here. I could try and clarify the situation by taking. The idea of taking here is to try and bring a pawn forward so that the bishop, it looks like the bishop is going to the b7 square. So it makes a lot of sense to try and trade and at a time when you can force a pawn to take back and then block in that bishop. So that's what white would like to do here. Although in this position, I think he could still take with the knight. Here, let's just check this out. C takes d5. This is not played in the game. If he takes with the knight, is there some punishment here? Not really. If I take with the knight, he could grab the bishop, and knight takes c7. Okay, well, it gets a bit complicated. So he does end up taking back with the pawn. That's interesting. Yeah, I was a little bit afraid of playing in this fashion because I thought I would be losing the bishop here. But if he has to take back the knight before grabbing the bishop, then I have time to trade off the bishop, and white's in pretty good shape. So that's probably a slightly better way of playing it. But what I did was okay, castling. Bishop b7. And now I decide to take. With similar ideas, he takes with the knight. So normally pawn takes and then shutting in the bishop. After knight takes, I thought at least I can trade off and get rid of this dark squared bishop, which is a good piece for him. So in a way, he's forced to choose between two different variations. Either he's going to give up his dark squared bishop, or he's going to end up with a pawn on d5. So either way, this should be good for white. So he takes back, and you know, I have a slight edge, nothing huge. I push on with e4, trying to build up this big center. He grabs on c3, and then plays c5 to directly undermine the center. So black is playing this opening really well, I have to say. That's what you want to do when your opponent builds up a big center, is find a way to undermine it. Well, it's one strategy you can use, but very common one. So I went queen e2 here, shoring up the e-pawn. And also, I want to bring a rook to the d file to defend the d pawn. He goes rook f to d8. He has the same idea. And I bring my rook to the d file. And then he goes knight to b8. An interesting maneuver here with the knight. It's going to relocate to the c6 square where it can put more pressure on the center. The knight on, you might think it was a waste then to have the knight at d7, but well, during the early part of the game it kept this bishop with an open diagonal, so it was useful from that point of view. But at this point in the game it makes sense to relocate it to c6, and it appears that he's got enough time for this maneuver. There's no big move I could play here. Well, it looks like the engine is saying maybe now is a good time to push on with d5. I wasn't sure about that. It is a pretty thematic move here, but I was a little bit worried about the queens facing off against each other. But I guess, well, the bishop defending the queen, it's just a trade at this point. So if I had pushed on with d5, and he took, he doesn't have to take, but if he took, the engine just wants to take back, allow the queen trade, and then can't he grab this pawn? Doesn't this lose a pawn? It's black's move here, right? I'll say he takes with the rook. Is there a problem with that? Problem is rook takes, bishop takes, and then the new rook to d1. Yeah, there's a mate threat on the back rank. Okay, that's pretty interesting. So that's a little bit deeper than I was able to calculate in this Blitz game. So that's interesting. So, but in this position, that's good to know. d5 is actually a good move here. Okay, I dropped the bishop back, you know, trying to open up this line for the rook to support the push, and now he goes knight to c6. And well, I go a3. I didn't want his knight hopping into the b5 square. He can exchange and force me to move my c-pawn to the d file, and then this square wouldn't be guarded anymore. So a3, he goes rook d6. Okay, but it looks like at that point he's starting to get an advantage. So what should I have played? It's about even here. Okay, so I missed the chance to play d5. My second best choice would have been rook to c1. Okay, and having played bishop to c2, I'm a little bit worse. And then knight to c6. At this point, I should play rook to b1, queen to d2. It's funny, I just got my queen off the d file. I didn't want to put it back there. Rook to c1 or rook to b1. These make sense, developing moves. Okay, so this a3 move, I guess this is a bit slow, and now it seems like black is getting an advantage. Although, well, we'll see how it goes. Rook to d6. He's preparing to double on the d file. Okay, yeah, I thought I wasn't out of the game totally. So I push on with e5 here, kicking his rook around. He drops his rook back to d8, and I play my queen to d3 now, threatening a nasty check over here, forcing g6. I thought this would help me out a little bit. The engine is completely unimpressed. Well, that's funny. It thinks it's completely even or a little better for black. Yeah, I thought creating some weaknesses over here would be good for me. And let's see, I followed up with queen e3, looking at the dark squares. I want to get the knight to g5 and the queen to h7, ideally. Maybe it's just a little too slow. He goes king g7, which is good. This keeps my queen from hopping into the h6 square. And now the engine wants me to take on c5. I played knight g5. This was my idea here. Yeah, now there's this tactic. So this is a very well-spotted tactic by my opponent. I really didn't see this coming. But the basis of the tactic is that my queen is doing two jobs here. It's defending the knight, and it's also defending the pawn on d4, which is under quite a bit of pressure. So yeah, black plays this part of the game really well. He takes the pawn, I take back, and then he takes with the knight, which at first looks like it's completely unsafe because I've got two pieces attacking there and he's got only one piece defending. But when I take back with the queen, I lose my knight over here on g5. So I went ahead with one exchange. I take with the rook. He takes back. So now his rook is hanging. But my knight is hanging if I take the rook. So I decide to give up the knight for a pawn. That is the best choice at this point. Queen takes and grab the rook. So we can pause and count the material. And it's actually still even. But my bishop is a little bit awkward here on c2. And this pawn is maybe a little bit too far advanced. His bishop has great scope over here, and it's well protected from the b7 square. So, so black is just better in terms of the position here. So let's see. It's black's turn to move. He goes queen d5. And yeah, I didn't see anything better than trading, and that's the approved move. Actually, he probably had better at this point. Rook to c8, activating the rook and attacking my bishop is a better move. Okay, but he's just happy to go for this endgame, which is kind of interesting because the endgame is about equal, and I really should be able to hold a draw from this position. There's only a slight weakness in the endgame, but it requires careful play. I start out good. I activate my rook, hit his bishop. He goes rook to c8, hitting my bishop. And I really wasn't sure about this endgame. For one thing, after I take his bishop, he takes my bishop. He's also threatening checkmate on the back rank. But I have time to deal with that, and that's the best way to play it. So just to put this on the board, this is how I could have drawn this game. If I were to take his bishop here, he takes mine. And now there's a threat of checkmate. I have to deal with that. But I can simultaneously deal with the mate threat and start to activate my king. And well, this looks like this position is about even. Looks like I can hold on to everything. So other than that, the second choice here is rook d2. But all these other moves give a pretty significant advantage to. Let's erase some of these other arrows. Rook to d2 is the second choice of the chess engine, but that gives a significant advantage to black. And actually, after the move I play, bishop b1, just getting the bishop out of the glare of the rook and preparing to reposition it somewhere else. It just didn't have many good squares. That's what I mean about my bishop. These squares are taken, and on d3 would block my rook, so it just didn't seem like a good square for it. So yeah, I was just having trouble finding good squares for my bishop, which gives black a significant advantage. And well, let's see, he plays bishop b3. Yeah, I guess that's a good move. This freezes my pawn over here, which is going to become a target, this isolated pawn. I go rook to e1. You know, the bishop was hitting my rook, and I want to defend my e-pawn. And now he goes rook c3, and it looks like there's no way I can save this a-pawn. You see, the evaluation is already one pawn in black's favor. I push on with f4 to at least hold on to this e-pawn and give me some chances, but now just bishop to e6, dropping back, holding my pawns at bay, and there's no way to save this pawn. I mean, I could push on with a4, but he can just keep chasing it. There's no way I can defend it. So I played king f2, trying to get my king in the game. He takes the pawn, and then he's got a pair of connected passed pawns, and there's just no way to stop this. So black goes on to win this game pretty easily. His bishop is nicely shutting down my pawns, and I never get anything going. So let's just go through the rest of the moves. I try to keep my pieces active and slow down his pawns as much as possible. I even managed to win one, but he's going to win with his last pawn. So I resigned at this point. But anyway, it was an interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And as I said, I won't be uploading any videos for a while, but I will be back next week with more videos, and I will see you then. Bye.